Hey guys, welcome back to the Fall to Summer podcast. We have Nick here today. Introduce yourself, Nick.
Hello, I am Nick, as they said. I'm 20 and I like to do art, and that's pretty much it.
I fuck with art.
Cool introduction. Now, one of the reasons why we had you on here is one of the topics of discussion that we've been focusing on is trying to get as many transgender stories out there to share the perspective with the world and try to normalize it as much as possible. And you are one of my closest friends who is transgender, and I would like to know what it was like growing up for you. So first, I would like to start off, what age did you come out to your parents, and that go?
All right. Well, I first came out as trans right before I was going into high school, so I was 14. Before that, I identified as gender fluid, which a lot of trans people kind of start out as gender fluid, which means that, you know, one day or at one moment they feel more feminine or more like a female, I guess. And other times they feel more masculine, therefore they feel like, you know, their gender is fluctuating. But that was when I was first learning about the community. Then I actually read more on being transgender. I realized that sounds a lot more like how I feel. So I came out to my friends and significant other at the time first. Then I guess the first family member that I told was my sister.
Right.
Then I haven't spoken to I haven't had contact with my mom since I was 14, so I haven't been able to tell her that. But as far as my dad, when I told him, he was like, well, isn't that just the same thing as being a tomboy? And I'm like, no. And I just left it at that. I didn't really want to keep on going with that because I'm just how my father is. I, didn't want to continue down that route. And then my grandma, I kind of never really told her. I think she just found out on her own because going into high school, I ordered a binder, and my reasoning to my grandma was I can use it so I can cosplay. But then she would see me come home from school with it on, and she would be like, why do you have that on? And I didn't really have a good excuse, so she pretty much figured it out on her own.
What's a binder?
So basically a binder, it's like a chest binder. It compresses your chest and makes you look more flat-chested. The one that I had I really like the one that I had. It was like a tank top in a way, but underneath was the binder part where I could tighten it or make it a bit looser. Over time, it stretched out and it was getting dirty because it had to be hand washed. But at the time, I wasn't really comfortable being going to my grandma or whoever and being like, hey, I need this, this has to be hand washed. So I kind of just, let's see, I want to say maybe my junior year, junior year, I stopped wearing my binder and I just went on I just accepted, I guess, or as much as you can accept with the gender dysphoria, being in a school environment. I just kind of learned to live like that.
I feel here's a good question. I guess the best time for me to ask it, I guess, what age do you feel is appropriate to talk about the change with a transitioning kid, and what age do you feel is appropriate to start taking these hormones and start talking to the doctor?
Right. So that's really complicated. I feel like you shouldn't have a kid. A kid isn't able to consent, in any form. So I don't think it's right for a minor to start taking hormones. Like, you know, and I think that's kind of sad because, you know, they go through puberty and they have to watch their body change. But there are a lot of times where there are people that transition, and then, like, if they're young and they transition and then they realize that they just, that's not the route that they wanted to go. And in my instance, I don't know. I definitely kind of wanted to, because I don't know, it's obvious I wanted to, but the reasons why I didn't want to was because I wanted to have biological kids of my own. And it's very, very important to do that research yourself ahead of time. And, you know, if you have kids, maybe educate them that, you know, because once you start taking hormones, you're sterilizing yourself. You can't, you know, it's going to be hard for you to have kids, if at all, later. And, you know, I don't think a kid or a minor is mentally capable of deciding whether or not they actually want to go through with it or not. Because, you know, I know people, I went to school with people that, you know, they're very adamant that they don't want kids, and then later on, you know, you see them, they have kids, and it's you know, it's a very serious thing. And, you know, there are, on the other hand, there are kids that, you know, I think, oh gosh, I don't know, I don't remember her name. There's like a really well-known trans like minor kid. I don't know, maybe she's not a minor anymore. Either way, she is she's kind of like, I don't know, people might see like she's like the face of kids, like trans kids, which in her case it did work out, because I don't know, I guess since she was a young, like a toddler, her parents saw that she did not go with male, what's the word? Pretty much wanted to be, you know, dressed as a female and,
Male,
you know, identified as a female.
Yeah.
Didn't follow the masculine stereotype, yeah.
Right. And, you know, even she's, to this day, she's like happy. She's transitioned still. And so I want to make it very clear that the way that I see life, I see everything on a spectrum. Everything, like, everybody has different views. Everybody has different experiences. So my experiences and my views do not coincide with another person's. Though there are going to be a lot of similarities, it's not all going to be the same. Like, what I tell you as my experiences or what my beliefs are, you can ask another trans person, whether they're female to male or male to female, and they could probably have completely different views.
Very true.
So yeah.
My stance on
Actually,
the whole situation. Do you have something to say?
Yeah, sorry. I like that you make a bigger point to it, because a lot of people get fed up on the question of, the whole gender aspect of things, when the bigger picture is that, people want to self-identify rather than fall into, societies that have been set in place, for decades by, just corporate media and things like that. Would you say that it's not as much having to do with sexuality? It's more having to do with freedom of choice?
And what does that regard to? Like being trans in general?
Broader aspect. Yeah.
Well, sexuality, so because that was another topic I was going to bring up later on, but that sexuality has nothing to do with your gender identity. So, I identify as a trans man, but I've always had boyfriends my whole life. But I've I don't know. I've also questioned my sexuality to a certain degree. I've always known that I've liked, I guess. See, I'm trying to pick my terminologies right because,
Everything's
the
such a
LGBTQ
weird, touchy situation, I feel.
right, because the LGBTQ community is, people want to think that it's rainbows and sunshines and that everybody's accepting regardless, but that's really not the case.
Oh my God, thank you.
They're accepting to their specific degree. So in my personal experience, I've seen that they're more accepting of the liberal views rather than more conservative views. So, yeah.
I've had similar experiences with the LGBT community because personally, I'm on the spectrum also, and I've always felt as if like sexuality was on the spectrum. It was a spectrum, and no one really fell straight or gay. Either way. But with that being said, when I was figuring out my sexuality and everything, being under the bi label, there was so much confusion. And this is the main argument that people always hit me with, especially now that I've I guess figured out my sexuality more, firmly. People are always like, well, you're always bisexual. And I'm like, but if I choose to go date, women, and I choose to only pursue women, no matter what, even if I do have those sexual desires, I feel like I'm a heterosexual man now. And there's like, no, but you still have bi pride though, right? And I'm like, well, for sure, I always have pride in being LGBTQ, but at the end of the day, I'm not bi anymore. But they always want to group me back in, and I'm like, okay, that's cool. But at what point can I separate? At what point,
I mean, right. I mean, the way that I see it, because, again, everything's on a spectrum, and if you're bisexual, you can be 75% favoring women and 25%, wanting or being into guys.
Yeah.
And just because that you're in a heterosexual relationship, being bisexual, it doesn't mean that you're not bisexual anymore. It just means that you're in a heterosexual relationship. So that's how I see that.
What happens when you get married, what happens when you get married? Because that's always been my final point of the thing. So if I choose to go marry a man, does that make me gay? Does that make me a homosexual, even though I might still desire some vagina every now and then?
I mean, the way that I see it is that, if you were married to a guy, then you're in a homosexual relationship, but that doesn't define your sexuality. True. You can still have your preferences, and that's a word that I'm going to get to in a minute. You can still have these preferences, but that doesn't erase all the other stuff. Like, it's okay for you to be in a heterosexual relationship and still like somebody of the opposite sex. That's actually, I don't know if it's mainly, I don't want to say mainly, but I know a lot of within and outside of the community, people look at bisexuals, and if they're in a heterosexual relationship, they'll be like, but I thought you were bi. As if they have to prove it to them.
Yeah,
like, there's nothing to prove.
That,
you don't have,
no matter what side of the spectrum it is, or even if it's just straight people, they're just like, but you're bi, and I'm like, yeah, but I still get down like that. I still have experiences with vagina, and then they're like, sure, dude. Either way, I always feel like an outsider on the spectrum whenever I mention I'm bi, and I'm like in some weird situation. I have a good friend, Robert, that questioned me multiple times about how, what situations make me, bi. How do I know that I'm bi? And I'm like, why should I have to prove it to you? It's my sexuality.
Exactly.
Type stuff.
Right.
Yeah. I'm sorry.
Like, for what reason do you want me to prove it to you? Like, are you trying to get something out of me? Like, that's just, it's weird to do that. I actually, there was a post that I kept seeing on Twitter, and it was, the post says, not wanting to date trans women stems from you guys not viewing them as real women. So yes, your preference is transphobic. And I kept seeing that being shared around so many times to the point that I had to make a Facebook post and share it to Instagram, which led me to losing my friend who is non-binary. So I basically said in the post that as a trans man that does not intend to take hormones or get surgeries for various reasons, I cannot expect a gay man to be sexually attracted to me. Again, I cannot expect a gay man that is attracted to penis to be sexually attracted to me, a trans man with a vagina. That does not make said gay man transphobic. And I said to please stop labeling people as transphobic or homophobic for simply having a sexual preference, asking questions like, would you still like me if I were the opposite sex, then getting mad if they don't say yes. Unless that person's bisexual, chances are the answer is going to be no. And that's okay. And I don't think people realize that it's like really hypocritical to say that when you're when you're advocating for your sexuality and you have to tell people constantly that it's not a choice, but then get mad at somebody else for their sexuality. It's not, a simple, I like men or I like women. It's also, I'm sexually attracted to penis. I'm sexually attracted to vagina. Again, it's a spectrum. Obviously, it doesn't excuse like people that clearly say those things, because there are people that bring those things up, and it's clear that they're being transphobic. But I'm not talking about that. That's same like a whole different topic.
Though. I mean, it's like a.
Pardon?
I said same goes for racist though. When you see these types of posts that harbor hatred in the background, it's always kind of the same tone and same underground. You know what I mean? It's always just kind of pushing that agenda of, well, you don't belong in my ideal world kind of stuff. And it's really fucked up. But same goes for our community, They have this ideal picture of rainbows and sunshines, like you had said earlier. But then at the end of the day, when it comes to really interacting with each other, we're not the same in person, And this is one thing I've always said about, like, just LGBT in general. I don't like when people use it as an excuse to be, I don't know, what they want it to be in life, or kind of try to be like, okay, I'm gay, that's my personality. Like, there's more to people than just your sexuality, Don't make it like your whole bit. Like, there's many people out there that have multiple layers to them, while some people are just shallow, and it sucks. But a lot of that is, like, stereotypes that are enforced into other people's minds, and we get bad reps for it, Like, no one's, and this is what I had to explain to my dad when I came out to my dad. I was like, look, Dad, no offense, but no one's thinking about you, in all honesty. Let's be real. No one's ever looking at you. And he's like, okay, but it's wrong to be gay and all that stuff. I was like, probably, but let's be real. It never will ever in your life affect you. You're a married man. Unless you're ever, like, in the situation where you're talking to a gay individual and you're giving him signs that you're also interested, it's probably not gonna happen. No one's gonna rape you, dude. Like, no one's running up on people. Where's the homophobia coming from? You feel me? And until he had to really accept his own son, that conversation never even appeared in his mind, popped up in his mind, and he thought, gayness is wrong. But now that it's at his front door, now he has to come up with a coping mechanism, or at least answer to, okay, not everyone's raping people. Like I told him when I was growing up, I was like, Dad, not everything you tell me can be true. I mean, I've seen people out here that are like that. Come on now. He's like, no, the Bible. And I'm like, okay.
Yeah, I mean, I have friends that, they go through their whole, I guess, school life, grade school, up until high school. Like, I had this one, or have this one friend that, she was out as bi, technically, but then I guess she might have retracted. I don't want to speak for her, but I just know, fast forward, she finally came to accept that she's a lesbian, and she actually commented on that post and said that she would be super open to be dating a trans woman if she's transitioned. If she hasn't transitioned, she just doesn't think that's something she's going to be attracted to. But after everything that she had to endure and like coming to terms with her sexuality, she said I'll be damned if somebody calls me transphobic because I'm not sexually attracted to somebody with a penis.
Right?
Like, you don't know somebody's journey in accepting themselves. Just also, my sister, who happens to be gender neutral, which, if I'm not mistaken, because I'm sure she probably knows more about this, but from my understanding, and what I know, is that she doesn't care if you call her a man, a woman, they, them. And honestly, if she had to choose, she would choose to have both because she just honestly just doesn't care. But so, like, I posted that, and the person that was my friend started commenting, and when I posted it, I kind of had a bad feeling that it was going to set off something with that specific person. And it did. So they started commenting saying, I feel like this is internalized transphobia. in saying that, basically saying, why can't you just date people for their personalities? Stop using your own community to validate your internalized transphobia. And like, they were saying that. Sorry, did you say something?
That would literally just be them being pansexual. Then no, yeah.
Yeah, right. That's what I was thinking.
So that's what I was.
I'm sorry.
So that, yes, but I also want to make it very clear that just because, like, pansexual, yes, they're dating people for their personalities, but what it boils down to is pansexual people don't care what your genitals are, because it's not like a homosexual, heterosexual person's not going to date somebody for their personality. It's just pansexual people don't care what your genitals are. You know, they just date you for you.
I will say, coming from the pansexual side, I'm no longer pansexual. I'm actually poly, but that's a different story for a different time. But coming from the pansexual side, that is totally true. But on top of that, though, they have experimented with asexuality at least once, most likely. I have myself, and it's a freeing experience for sure. But continue.
Right, and so this person said, you know, as a non-binary person living with other non-binary and trans people who they have asked about it, they were talking about how they already have so much dysphoria built up around their genitals, and aren't defined by their genitals. So they're asking, why should they be boiled down to their genitals? If all you see people is as penis and vagina, then that's transphobic. And they also continued and went on to say, it's not their fault that they don't have a dick, so why is it anyone's right to make them feel worse for that? Date people for their personalities and who they are. If all someone can see is for, you know, their genitals, then that's transphobic, and it's part of the problem. I let them know that I don't think I'm really educated enough about non-binary people to make a comment about their community. But I don't know. The way that they were talking to me as if I didn't experience dysphoria, which is completely rude. And, you know, the result of that, it really hurt me. You know, this person, I've known them since, you know, before they came out. And, you know, honestly, I had no idea that they experienced dysphoria at all. I had no idea that non-binary people could experience dysphoria until they told me. I didn't ask them because, you know, I was afraid of this type of reaction of, you know, them going to their roommates and having this conversation and not being able to think for themselves, which has, you know, been this whole time. You know, they came out as non-binary when they moved away from the state to another state and moved in with all these roommates who happened to be non-binary / trans. So, you know, I was just very confused. And it was, especially since they didn't come to me at any point with, beforehand. You know, we were very close. They didn't come to me at all beforehand or even mention anything regarding that. So it kind of like took me by surprise, and I just, you know, I wanted to tread lightly, and they just happened to tell me that, you know, they experienced dysphoria. So I was like, oh, okay. So I know that non-binary people can experience transphobia. Dysphoria. But, you know, I reiterated back to them that I am biologically female, and that's a fact. It's my sex. It's not my gender. Unless, I mean, even if I decide to get a sex change, I'm still always forever going to be a biologically female. I don't think it's healthy to, which I know that there's a decent amount. I don't want to say a lot, because I know at least online, from what I've seen, there's a good amount of people that recognize that, but then there's also the people that don't want to recognize that at all.
I would like to say this is a hairy part of the topic that we're getting into. I like to say a lot of information isn't really built up on what we're about to talk about. And in all honesty, there's a lot of things about the situation that scream a lot of this is an emotional driven thing. On top of that, it's a lot of internalized hate, like I had said, being misplaced and projected onto our own community or back onto the community itself from not feeling accepted enough, if you know what I mean. And
Right.
I've had binary friends too. But more than anything, a lot of them speak of not fitting into the mold that the LGBT community kind of pours them into. And they kind of feel like they're not advocated for a lot. So with that being said, I can't really make a lot of choices or a lot of decisions on what's going on with them because I don't have the information, you know, compared to when it does come to being bi or poly or pan. There's a little bit more information on that, you know. You can actually get some facts. You can look up multiple people's experiences on that and how their communities accept them. Because when I jumped into being poly, I immediately got guides. I immediately got lists of how it works, of how, like, if you're a unicorn, this stuff, oh, the hierarchy system, etc., you know. And I found that for me personally, that's what just screamed, that's probably what I'm into when it comes to love. Unfortunately, I just liked it. You know, it screamed organism, it screamed, you know, freedom, and I love free love in the first place. But they don't feel that acceptance when joining the community, you know? Like, when you finally figure out that missing piece of what you've been missing, you know, they don't get that from just joining our community of LGBT, and I feel that for sure.
Well, yeah, I mean, sorry, were you finished?
I was gonna say, but it's also a shame that we don't make it a safe place to talk about anything, though, because it feels like that should be the place where we should be talking and communicating and forming these ideas. I understand that a lot of places like to label it as pseudoscience, but in all honesty, psychology in general is also labeled as a pseudoscience, but in all honesty, that's what I consider to be one of the most helpful methods of dealing with problems in reality, instead of just masking them with band-aids. With that being said, I wish that we could just talk to each other about what we're into, how we like to identify, and what we've experienced in life, but people have such walls and borders put up for no reason at all. Even towards friends, you know, you can't get past those borders when it seems like, damn, we've been so close for so long, you seem like someone that I knew, and then they're thinking to themselves, you never got past this wall, you never got past this wall, when you're thinking to yourself, dude, I've opened completely up, you know. And that's the real shame, that just living in this day and age, you never know when someone's truly real with you and when someone's not, you know. You never know when someone's being open with you or when someone's just letting down another wall and giving you that personal information that they consider to be, you know, in general, to their close friends or just a friend, you know?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I agree, and I think a lot of that also stems with kind of, you know, what we were talking about earlier, is that the community is accepting for the most part, just as long as you fit these certain criterias, and I don't think that's healthy, because then there's a whole other spectrum of people that feel like, you know, that they belong in the community, but they don't feel accepted into the community. So, like, they feel like they belong, but don't at the same time. And even, I know there's, so I never really delved much into the female to male trans community. But I do know in the male to female community, it's very toxic. Like, you would, you know, and it's sad because a lot of people turn towards the community to find this acceptance and find people that are just like them. But in reality, in the male to female community, it's filled with people trying to compare themselves with each other, trying to see who passes better. And I just think that's really sad. And I even brought up in the post that I said that growing up trans, you know, you kind of learn quick that people have these kinds of preferences, and it's okay. It's, you know, since they came out and they were already an adult, it's no lie, or, you know, we have different experiences, because I grew up, you know, I grew up before, so when I came out, it was before high school, so going into high school, that's my experience. And, you know, you're in this school community with kids that are just, you know, some are obnoxious, some are not. So I don't want to say it's harder, because everybody's experiences are different. You know, somebody's family could just not accept them, and that, you know, that's, or disown them, and that's terrible. But growing up out as trans is a much different experience than if you're an adult and you're surrounded by people that are like you and all have pretty much the same mentality. It's, I don't know, it's different. And that's also something that is very important to note, that, you know, somebody that grew up trans versus somebody that they're already an adult when they came out. And I also want to make it clear that you can, like, a person can realize that they're trans at any point in their life. Let's see what I had. So basically, you know, some people kind of, sorry. Oh, so some people, like, know as a kid that they're trans. Like that one girl that I was telling you about earlier, she just knew as a kid that she was trans. But other people spend years feeling like they don't fit in without really understanding why. And that's kind of how I felt up until the point when I discovered what trans is, what it is to be trans. Because, you know, when I was younger, I had, like, most of my friends were guys. And then the one female friend that I had was a tomboy, but I didn't feel like that was me at all. Like, I felt different than just a tomboy. I don't know. There's no other way for me to explain it. It just didn't feel like me. So, also, because I was talking to some people at work today, and I brought up this, how I can look in the mirror, because we have a mirror right here, and when I'm standing, it conveniently cuts off from, like, my neck. And when I look in the mirror at my body, I'm like, that's a nice body. Like, that's, you know, I have nothing against that body. But the moment that I associate it with me and my face, that's when the dysphoria really starts kicking in, because I'm like, but that's not the body that I should be having.
Right. Now, I remember earlier you mentioning the risks of transitioning, and mentioned sterilization being one of them. I was just wondering, what other risks can you think of that come with the transition?
Yeah, so some risks that, other than that, are social stigma, which, if you don't know what that is, it's disapproval or discrimination against a person based off of perceivable social characteristics that distinguish them from other members of society. Right. Discrimination, harassment, repressing gender identity actually can damage your emotional and mental health. So accepting who you are, or other people accepting you, can be very life-affirming, and honestly life-saving. Like, there are people that just, you know, they can't handle it, and that's sad. So, or not only that, they get, you know, beaten and murdered for people. That actually reminded me, going back to, it's still on this topic, but back onto what I was talking about before with the friend that I had. I also mentioned that it's really extremely dangerous to not disclose to somebody that you, of a romantic or sexual interest, that you are trans, because that's how people get murdered. Like, it happens a lot where people, and it's not that they do it maliciously, it's because they're scared. So, and once they realize that they're too far into it, then they have to, you know, come clean, I guess, or, you know, be truthful that they're trans. Then that's how they get murdered, where people are like, oh, well, you led me on, which I don't understand how that warrants you murdering somebody. But
still not murder worthy, no.
I'll say in America, hey, dude, being alive warrants your death. Be real.
I mean, that's what it seems like sometimes.
It's freaking crazy.
Earlier, you mentioned that you haven't spoken with your mother since you were 14. And I know personally from just being your friend that your relationship with your father hasn't always been the best. With that being said, what to you makes family, and who that you are not blood related to has helped you the most in life?
Right. So this is the moment where I'm going to bring out a little quote that I'm sure Parker's probably going to really enjoy. But my favorite quote regarding family is a supernatural quote. And it's, "A wise man once told me, family doesn't end in blood, but it doesn't start there either. Family cares about you, not what you can do for them. Family's there for the good, bad, all of it. They got your back even when it hurts. That's family." So that's spot on what I define family as. I obviously, if I had to, I definitely would prefer, or like, I choose to refer to people like, see, I honestly, my relationship with my father is like very complicated right now. I just realized that it's going to be a month, or not a month, but a year of me working at the job that I'm working at right now. So then that would mean that it's going to be a year since I've talked to my dad. So I don't know. I definitely, if I don't feel comfortable referring to or calling them family, then I'll just refer to them as a blood relative. You're my blood relative. As far as family, I definitely would consider that, even though I haven't spoken to her since I was 14, my mother, and all my siblings, and my grandma on my mom's side. That's who I consider my family. I do, obviously pets are a family to me, or pretty much anybody that is very close to me, has stuck with me through thick and thin. My best friend, shout out to her, even though she's probably not going to listen to this, but either way, I consider her family. I guess, see, I'm very weary about this because I'm like very reserved with all the things that I've experienced throughout my life. I'm very cautious at opening myself up to people, and like I don't want to, refer to somebody as my family when in reality, who knows what can happen that, then they decide to turn on you. I
Big fact.
I stopped planning for my future, or like I stopped planning for a future with anybody. Like obviously I'm with my boyfriend. It's not that I don't want to have a future with him. I've planned out or envisioned a future with somebody, or I've envisioned my future in general one way, and it's completely just nothing like it. So I kind of do that, I guess, to protect myself, or in my feelings. So
I feel that.
Yeah, that's
life hits you with so many punches. You got to start rolling with them. You got to start making defense strategies. You're not always going to try to get hit. Some people get tired of getting hit. In all honesty, that's how I was in high school. I got up all these walls because I was like, dude, forget the friends that are trying to leave me. I can leave them before they leave me, in all honesty, But those always form bad habits. But on a different note, though, here's my thing. Do you still go to, like, the family reunions and stuff? Is that weird?
I actually, so my family's like weird. We never really had family reunions. So basically everybody that I mentioned, minus my best friend, but like, you know, my siblings, my grandma on my mom's side, and my mom, that's always been my constant in my life. Yeah. I mean, I guess not when I was 14 and I don't have contact with my mom or younger siblings anymore, but, you know, that's always been my constant, and those have always been the people that have showed me that they care about me and they love me, which, not saying that my mom is, you know, or anybody rather in my family is perfect or hasn't, you know, because when I was younger, my mom didn't like that I used the word dude. Like, she did not like the word dude for whatever reason, because she said that boys say that word. And I think that mainly stemmed from, you know, her not being able to raise my sister, because my sister had to go off to Puerto Rico with my grandma. So she wasn't able to raise my sister, and so I guess she wanted to have that experience with me. And I even, like, I had curly hair and all these things that she adored and really wanted to, you know, dress me up and all these things, but like, it never felt like me. So yeah, I'm not entirely sure where I was going with that, but
yeah, it'd be like that sometimes.
Yeah, I tend to, like, you know, get the main topic, and then I think of these points that I want to hit, and then I forget about where was I going with that.
Heck yeah, especially when you're passionate about something, you know, you kind of just go down the passion spiral, and then you're sitting there like, I'm empty. I ran out of gas. Well, here's my next question. What were your feelings on Black Lives Matter and what's going on in America right now? You know, just all the chaos.
Right. Well, I was also gonna say, I mean, this is regarding Black Lives Matter, but that I think it's important for the Black community to get more of a voice, and so regarding the whole riots and whatever that's been going on, for me personally, if I honestly don't care if somebody happens to loot a Target, for example, or like, it's big corporations that I don't care about. I feel bad about the smaller businesses, like, especially like a lot of them are Black owned.
That's a shame.
When I was a kid, they're like, it took a lot for me to accept myself. When I was a kid, I didn't want to speak Spanish because nobody around me would speak Spanish. And like, I lived in a primarily white neighborhood. Obviously there were Black people. And if you don't know, I'm a half Black Hispanic. So my dad is a Black Hispanic. My mom is a white Hispanic. And it took me very long for me to accept that for myself. And it's sad to say that, but it was because of the lack of representation around me, because I felt different. Like, I felt very different. I felt like I stuck out a lot. You know, I didn't like my last name. I mean, I don't like it now for a different reason, but I didn't like my last name because it wasn't like anybody else's around me. Whenever teachers would come up to me and, because honestly, I don't know why they did this. Maybe it was because that they saw that, you know, one parent was Black, one was white, but they would get, whenever we would do these assignments or projects, and, you know, you had to draw yourself, and they would hand a peach, I guess, paper to it's basically to represent like a white skin tone, and then like the brown paper, and they'd be like, all right, which one do you want? And like, they would ask me, because like everybody else, they would just give it to them, but they would ask me for some reason, I guess because they knew that I was mixed. And I would always pick the peach one, and to myself, which, you know, it's kind of like, I don't know, I kind of wish they had a tan one, honestly, but like, right? For me as a kid, I would pick that not only because, like, well, the primary reason for myself that I justified it for myself was, well, the colors aren't going to show up well on the darker paper, so I want to be able to draw myself and it be visible. But like looking back on it, I don't know, like I just kind of find it sad that like I didn't feel comfortable with myself because everybody around me was, you know, not a person of color. So I don't know. Regarding Black Lives Matter specifically, I don't even know where to start. There's like so much. Like I don't understand why people are making it a political thing when it really should just be, you know, you caring about another human being. You know, it's insane that, you know, a white person and a black person can get, you know, locked up for the same exact charge, but a black person will get it like a much longer sentence than a white person.
Heck yeah. I've been
right, and their bail is
like
going to be higher.
Yeah.
Right, and their bail is going to be higher.
Which is crazy because my exact situation was me and a friend had gone to like the bank together, and it turned out that he had like a fake check, and I had nothing to do with it, right? But still ended up going to jail with him, and even like the people that worked there were like, "Hey kid, what are you here for?" And they were like, "Are you sure you're supposed to be here?" I was like, "I guess." What does it say on my paper? They was like, "Says your name at the top, but it says everything else about a different person." I was like, "Jesus Christ, word!" I was like, "You want to let me go?" Hey kid.
That's you know, that really makes me angry.
My bail was bigger than his, but his parents decided to let him sit longer. So I was like, "Dang, I'm sorry." They released me on pretrial, thank God, because I was sitting there sweating like, my parents can't afford this. Why'd I get in this situation?
Mm-hmm.
I should have stayed home, you know?
Right, and I don't know, it's really, I don't know, it just makes me really angry, and, you know, there was...
And I feel like that's the problem with the Black Lives Matter movement, though. All this misplaced anger, though. I feel like it's not being channeled and funneled right, you know? They don't have, like, clear points of what they truly want, clear points of how to get there, and clear points of what change actually looks like and when we'll be there. You know, and that's what really
mm-hmm.
people don't really think about, you know?
Right, and
when going to a protest, at least.
I don't know, like, yeah, I mean, I personally, like, this year I haven't gone to a protest. I would love to if, you know, there wasn't COVID, but then there's also the chance that it could get violent, and it's just, you know, the moment I see that happening, I would dip, because I'm not about that. But like, I don't know, it's just like a lot of people being angry at each other. For me, I'm mainly just angry at the lack of human decency, like the lack of compassion. You know, it's just being a decent human being. That's all I want. Because when I was younger, I was your typical edgy kid, and I would say stuff that I would never say, or say and do things I would never do now. And I low-key forgot where I was going with that, but
it's okay. Hey, one last topic. We gotta wrap it up soon, unfortunately.
Yeah.
I would like to know your stance on the violence in the community of LGBTQ.
I think it's ridiculous. Like, there, even the other week, not last week, or it was like probably the week before, there were 3 trans women in California that they got beaten and like humiliated, and the people were recording it, and that's really scary. And for me personally, I've been fortunate where I haven't felt like I were to be in danger at all. I know when I was younger and I was in school, so before going into high school, I had a therapist who called the high school and told them about me beforehand. And then on my first day, our guidance counselor called me down and had a talk with me and basically said, like, was making me feel welcomed and saying that I could use the male restroom if I ever want to, but if I ever felt so uncomfortable, I can just use the teacher's restroom. So when I was younger, I would just go into the male's restroom because I didn't care. over time I would go, but then stop, and like I would make sure I wouldn't talk, because beforehand, anytime that I would talk, there would be that one guy be like, "Yo, is there a girl in here?"
Heck yeah, that'd be me.
me being like 14 and whatever, I would be like, "No, there isn't." So I would like talk back, but then eventually I would either go and not talk at all, and then eventually I just wouldn't go at all. I right now I'm at the point I don't like going into public restrooms, and if I do, I will go into the females' restroom because I'd rather be safe than sorry. So there's I don't know, the violence within the LGBTQ community is ridiculous. I also wanted to touch up on the importance of trans equality and accepting trans people. Not only is it very helpful and life changing, but trans people are more likely to either get denied or fired from their job. They're more likely to face harassment, bullying, homelessness, live in poverty. Let's see what else I had. They're more likely to be evicted or denied housing or access to a shelter, and face abuse or be incarcerated or targeted by law. And whenever trans people are incarcerated, I think it's kind of sad because, if a trans woman, meaning a male to female, gets incarcerated, then she's going to be put in a male's prison.
Yeah.
And that's dangerous because then she becomes a target. And I mean, it's the same way for the other way around. And, it's very complicated because, our prison system is wacky as it is, and I don't think that you should open up a new prison system just for LGBTQ people. But I think starting the conversation, educating yourself, that's the right step towards, acceptance and, people, knowing more about this, because, the part that pushes people away is them not knowing anything.
The fear of the unknown will always push people away, I feel, in my personal opinion. But with that being said, Fall to Summer's whole thing is to always raise awareness on any fact, so that people can have, the option of deciding with all the info on the table. And with that being said...
Yeah, and I think it's really important to... sorry. I was just going to say, I think it's very important to be open to have these conversations, because... people are afraid because of these people that attack other people, like these people within the community attack people for not having the same views as them. When,
exactly.
If you can't advertise yourself as a community that is loving and accepting of all people, and then just, attack somebody for their sexual preference, or, everybody has their own opinions. I think it's important to, accept to a degree, or respect that, I guess, respect people's opinions. If you don't agree with somebody, you don't have to talk to them. Exactly. I think it's important to at least educate them to your best degree, very nicely too. Like, I don't know anybody that, I don't know. I guess people in the army get yelled at a lot, but like, I don't learn from somebody yelling and degrading me. So why would you, jump to that if you want somebody to learn more and accept more about your community?
Very true. I agree with that. But personally, I get, a lot of information through a lot of loud talking. That's just the household I come from. And, that's an environment thing. And a lot of these problems do stem from an environmental space. And on next episode, we might have a focus on that. And you'll be back on to finish up your topics and to give a bigger topic on the trans community with other individuals, and we can all have a round table and talk about it. Thank you for being
It'd be very exciting.
With us. Heck yeah.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. It was very fun.
Hey, no problem. You'll be back on. Any closing arguments or statements, P. Arker?
I have nothing, Mr. Nick. Glad to see you again. It was good to have you. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in. For sure, follow the social media. I am linking it into the description for you.
And buy our merch.
Check out Nick's art channel. I will also be posting that in the description. Thank you guys so much. Have a good one.